Welcome everyone to Discourse. Today we're going to be discussing American Insanity by Leroy E. Cossette. This book reflects my views and my opinions of the political insanity that has overtaken the United States as a direct result of American citizens becoming apathic and failing to keep vigilant over our governing politicians. I reflect on how the America I grew up in is rapidly slipping away, never to be experienced by my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, or following generations. So as we go through our discussion, this book, like the author stated, are his views and his opinions. So we're definitely going to not make this into a political debate. We're just going to state what the author himself is trying to present to his readers. So we're not going to try and involve our own political values or beliefs, opinions or anything like that. We just want to present what he has.
American Insanity.
American Insanity.
So about the author. The author was involved in the Vietnam War. I believe he was 19 or just a young adult, soon after high school. He served 12 months in Vietnam with the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, and he mentions it was traumatic from day one. I believe on the second day that they landed, they already lost a casualty of war, and for the full 12 months, it was just left and right. The author experienced it, and from that, he has a personal testament and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, that he got, which motivated him in his activism and politics. I am a personal testament to the result of our country's unjustified injection into the civil war of another country. Since my return from Vietnam, my life has been one of many difficult periods, suffering from extreme anxiety, depression, and the failure of 2 marriages, all as a direct of PTSD. The shadow of combat in Vietnam is a never-ending dominant force within my mind. Yeah, and so he shares some cool history about Vietnam, like how we got involved, which it could be like many wars. We kind of inject ourselves in there and get a reason to get involved. So a little bit of history, which is good for the history buffs out there. And he also shares the failure of the President Johnson at the time for kind of getting involved too much and bringing politics into war, which the author states is what caused, or one of the reasons of the failure of why we lost the Vietnam War, because he was kind of puppeteering the war instead of letting the generals and the soldiers run the show. That is their profession, but yet they were being held back or being told not to do this or not to do that.
Yeah, unable to do their jobs, fulfill their duties.
Yeah, and it's another reason why his distrust for certain politics and the government being too involved where they shouldn't be or not involved where they should be. And he shares a lot of research and just his interpretation or facts that he found out there.
And so that's where his activism began, from his personal experience. So throughout the book, like you said, we do get some history thrown out there because he actually lived it, right? But he also goes on to discuss a lot of topics, things like gender and sexuality, immigration, education, free speech is a huge one that he talks about, losing faith in God, global warming and the EPA, how corporations get involved in the latest political trends, and like you said, a lot of corruption, right? So he covers a lot of different topics, and he really shares his perspective and his point of view, and we really get a good look as to how he feels the way he feels about certain things. I think he does a good job in proving his point. It's always important to see everybody's perspective. The one thing I definitely did connect with this author was that we should all be able to just sit down and have a conversation about all these things that affect us. And it affects all of us, not just in the United States. It affects all the countries, right? So we should all be able to just be adults and sit down and have conversations, hard conversations, which is a lot of political stuff. So that's definitely one thing that I agree with, that we should all just put aside our differences and come together and have open communication to get things done, to get things changed.
Regardless of which political party you're involved with.
The author does go on to say that he's a Judeo-Christian. So this is his standpoint from that perspective. But it's important for everybody to know how someone like him, how he feels, how he thinks. Like to be in his shoes, to live his life. Like he was telling us about his background, where he grew up, how he grew up, him being in the Vietnam War and or serving in the Vietnam War.
And his experience in coming home, which unlike
Right.
the World War II veterans, they came home, they were heroes, were in Vietnam. The government, from what he shared in his book, just kind of dropped them off and was like, all right, you're on your way, get on the bus, go home, and you're on your own from now on. And also the people were treating them horribly, like baby killers or...
No, I definitely have heard that on multiple accounts, right? In different biographies, different historical like documentaries and things, that a lot of those soldiers who came home, those were the experiences that they also either lived or their fellow comrades lived, and were called things and treated horribly. So that's definitely historically accurate, unfortunately.
So, and he did work for the Department of Veteran Affairs for quite some time, so he got some experience there. And he shares a lot in the beginning of the book. He has a lot of what I call like "where am I" quotes, where he is it like, where am I in life where I can speak my mind without someone telling me that I'm this or that I'm that, where I can express my constitutional rights without being wrong in this area or being politically incorrect here. So he does share a lot of that in the beginning, which kind of gives you an idea of where he's going to go for the remainder of the book. And as you mentioned, he has some articles that he looked up or just his viewpoints or experiences, and he expands on them.
Yeah, he definitely did a lot. You can tell he did a lot of research, self-research, and he took the time to gather articles to help prove his perspective.
Yeah, so the author, he grew up and he was a Democrat, but after all his experiences, the Vietnam War, and seeing what he calls like the failures or the corruption, he switched parties after the Clinton inauguration for his second term as president. So he switched and now he's in the Republican Party, and on the other side, the Marxist-Communist Democratic Party.
Yeah, so he references the two a lot. So you definitely know who he's talking about when he's talking about it. And he does mention at the beginning, when he is talking about the Marxist-Communist Democratic Party, he's not referencing like a singular person. He's referencing the top elitist group.
And what really got him started into this activism in politics was that back in 2004, when his wife retired, he volunteered as a volunteer firefighter, and he also did some work as an emergency medical technician, where while working there he saw that there was a lot of like corruption and abuse of government property. Fire chief was using like a government equipment for personal use. There were people drinking on the job and going to like a house fire intoxicated or on something else, and he was like, what? You're not supposed to be doing this. Like, we all know our taxpayer dollars, like, that's the most precious thing ever. Like, you use my money to fix the road, I expect you to fix the road, not go to a political party or use it to support someone else. Use it for what it's meant for.
Or also maybe like be drunk and be on drugs and like do a horrible job, so you just wasted my money.
Yeah, and you could probably kill someone.
Yeah, and kill people. Yeah. Ooh, good God.
So, of course, he saw it, he did his little audit, and he reported it. But the higher-ups, those that oversee that everything's being done correctly, and they disregarded it. They said, don't worry about it. He's been doing this for 20 years. There hasn't been any incidents. And he was like, it doesn't matter. It's still abuse of taxpayer money and trust. And there was multiple citations or things that he caught. But he noticed that they were all in their inner circle, and they had each other's back. So regardless what they did, the corruption, they couldn't do anything about it. So what did he do next? He started sharing that information with the public, posting it on social media, and kind of pushing it, because when you see something like that that's not right, he just felt like he had to report it. Like, this is not good. Especially working with the Department of Veteran Affairs and other government agencies, he felt like it was his duty. So eventually, word got out, information was shared, and people started to speak their mind, and it got so big that the politicians, they had to act. But before they did, when the internal audit started, those people, the fire chief and others, they ended up quitting because they knew they were in the wrong, and they finally got caught. After that, it kind of escalated. He noticed the power of getting information, not just getting information, but getting it out to the people. So that kind of further kickstarted his activism.
And wanting to get people involved, right, into the politics and changing things.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us in our discussion of American Insanity by Leroy E. Cossette.